Las Vegas. Good morning. My name is Larry Perlman. I'm a member of the board. I'm greeting you on their behalf. And I want you to all appreciate the fact that I arranged it so the rain would hold off until you all got here. And now, you bring it on, the flowers need it.
But stop when we're done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for those who are not too familiar with Unitarian Universalism, it is not a creed, but rather an organization that has what I would call a spiritual base and has principles. And you'll notice in your order of service that you probably got, on the very front is the mission of Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Shenandoah Valley, UUCSV for short, and on the inside you'll see our 8 principles. These are principles that each, as individuals, we strive to live by. You're going to find out really quick here that we don't all agree with each other. In fact, believe it or not, you may not agree with some of the things that this man says today. That is possible.
No, that's not true.
And that's okay, because in UU, we encourage everybody to pursue an understanding of truth that resonates within your own heart, not because somebody else says it or it's written in. Whether it comes from this place, from a religious tradition, which we honor as well, whether it comes from a scientific foundation, or basically whatever you connect with, it's just fine. We like to say we don't have to think alike to love alike. Thank you. I would like to read the land acknowledgement, because we do recognize that this land that we are meeting on was occupied by folks long before we came here from Europe. UUCSV acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the ancestral home of the Cherokee and of other indigenous people. The Cherokee, through stewardship, understanding, and conservation, survived and thrived in this land. We acknowledge their enduring connection to their homeland.
And they're still here.
That's what I said there. Enduring connection. Right.
And some of us didn't come from Europe.
You're gonna have a tough time today.
Come on, man. You gotta let the man finish his sentence.
Now, unfortunately, Michael won't have a lot of time to speak today because we have so many announcements. I've never seen this many announcements, but I'll try and get through them quickly. Pawpaw, not this one, but it's the largest native fruit, and it will be shown and given away out during coffee hour by Jeff. For those who don't know Jeff, you'll see him, he'll be the guy with the pawpaws, out at the picnic tables. Okay. Then this flyer will be posted on the back bulletin board. It's for those who are familiar with natural sanctuary burial. We have all been facing our own mortality in the last couple of years, and Ursula, it urged her to purchase a plot in a green cemetery and consider how to plan an appropriate burial with a group of death doulas. So there will be a meeting for people who are interested in such things on Thursday, September 8th, and the information will be on this flyer that will be posted. Susan Enright Hicks, who is our Director of Religious Education, is offering an adult RE discussion group based on the works of Harvard professor Michael J. Sandel. If you would be interested in reading his book, Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do, and discussing that book and accompanying lectures over the next few months with Susan and others from the congregation, please look for flyers in the portico and on the bulletin board and sign up there or contact Susan. Today is the last chance. This is your last chance To sign up to express your interest in getting a tour and attending a presentation about rain gardens on October 6th from 5 o'clock to 6:15 right here at the church. Actually, we'll be outside in the rain garden. There's a sign-up sheet on the snack table, because I know you're all going to get to the snack table. And lastly, most of you know by now about the Julia Jordan Fund that has been created for those who would like to donate to that. Her cousins, John and Betty, are very supportive of that. And in fact, they're spreading the word to her friends back in New Mexico and other places who will be sending in donations. Those donations will go to support the things that she loved in this church, the Welcome Circle, which is the New Americans, and also the social action funds. And her cousins took one more step, and they have said that they would like to donate things that are in Julia's estate in her home right now that they didn't take, or that the person buying the house didn't take, to go towards the UU auction. So the way we're going to do that, we're not going to do it in the auction, it would be too nuts, is on Sunday, September 11th, after service from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, Don Wilson will be at Julia's house, and I will as well. And all the items that are for sale will be marked with green tape with prices. And you all come and take what you want that reminds you of Julia. And those will go into the auction fund.
You're like a walking bulletin. We'll find a different way.
Larry, I got one more.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sally.
Just to remind people who are interested in attending the women's group, it's this Thursday at 5:30. Okay, emails haven't gone out as quickly as they usually do because I've been crazy busy.
Thank you.
Welcome visitors.
Yeah, that's next on the list. Okay, at this time, we'd like to welcome our visitors, and I noticed that we have a few, or at least folks that I didn't recognize when you walked in. And we are happy to have you stand up, introduce yourselves, say a little bit about where you're from, that kind of thing, if you want to. If you don't, you don't have to. That's what UU is all about. You do what's right for you. And we always start on this side, so I'm going to start on this side. Anybody who's new or maybe is here for the second or third time or hasn't been here in a while, please stand up if you'd like to and introduce yourself. Okay, well, I should have started on that side. Any visitors on this side who would like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Carolyn Martin, and I have two children, James and Jacob, and they're 10 and 9. We moved here originally from Texas, moved to Kentucky for about a year and a half, and then came here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we gave you a whole pew for yourself?
And I got my own I know.
And I did not get a whole pew.
Oh.
I'm Richard, and I'm actually a native Black Mountonian. I was born in Asheville's Mission Hospital, and now back here to finish this last phase of life. So this is good. And what a beautiful community. Are you
Yes,
this
yes.
good?
Thank you. Yeah, see us later, the facade will be over.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning. My name is Howard Parrish. I'm here with my partner, Jennifer Lutters. We moved to Black Mountain a month ago from Colorado. We're originally from Virginia and went to Camp Rockmont as a kid. So that's how Black Mountain was on my radar screen, so it really feels like a dream come true.
Welcome, I'd love to have you. Anybody else on this side? Okay, so we'll just explain to the visitors, you have to balance things out next week when you come, some have to. Well, thank you, and welcome here. You know, I would like to honor the fact that it takes courage to come into a new community for the first time. And so thank you for coming into our community. Stick around afterwards and we'll have a coffee hour, get to know people, and see if you really like us. You know? If you have an interest in learning more about us, There's a little card that you'll find either in the pews in front of you or on the back table that you can fill out and say what you're interested in, and we're just staying in touch. Okay, at this point, if you would please either totally destroy or at least silence any cell phones you have or anything else that makes noise, little children, whatever. And, well, I'm sorry, Mike, we've run out of time.
Let's all after the service.
We would now like to mark the beginning of this part of our service.
Well, thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you next week at this time. It's been wonderful. The words. Now, this is a little lengthy, but it's okay. These words are from Barbara Pescan. These are our opening words this morning. And she writes, "In this familiar place, we just want you to listen to the sounds of breathing, the creaking chairs, shuffling feet, clearing throats, and the sighing all around you, people trying to catch their breath. But know that each movement and glance meant for you holds a life within it. And these are signs that we have all chosen this morning to be in each other's company. We have things to say to each other, things not yet said, but in each other's presence, our hearts are trembling. But the doors of our hearts are open. And the doors that are not open wait to be unlocked. Each silent thing is waiting on the threshold between knowing and unknowing. So listen and rejoice, and welcome this morning. Please stand as you are willing and able. Thank you, Diane. And join us in singing our opening hymn this morning, hymn number 40. Bring no more thy music.
39.
Which comes after before 40, which is what I was saying. 39. Please be seated. Our responsive reading in the back of the great hymnal is number 662, the words of former Unitarian Universalist minister A. Powell Davies. We'll read this responsively. Strange and foolish walls. The years of all of us are short, our lives precarious.
Our days and nights go hurrying on, and there's scarcely time to do the little that we might.
Yet we find time for bitterness, for petty treason and evasion.
What can we do to stretch our hearts enough to lose their littleness?
Here we are, all of us, all upon this planet, bound together in a common destiny.
Living our lives between the briefness of the daylight and the dark.
Kindred in this, each lighted by the same precarious, flickering flame of life. How does it happen that we are not kindred in all things else?
How strange and foolish are these walls of separation that divide us.
All righty, this is the time in the service when we invite you to come and share a joy, a concern, a sorrow. The flame keeper is Diane Graham. The mic is on and the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Marty Saltzman, and I have a sorrow first and a joy. The sorrow is my good friend and former neighbor Rick Clemenson Keith has been in the medical center in Johnson City for a week now with a perfect storm of all sorts of things that have gone wrong with him. And who knows, so please send healing energy to Rick. He's a great guy. And my joy is that last week when the FDC announced that there's a new bivalent COVID vaccine available, I was playing bridge with Larry and we were discussing it, and Larry goes, "Betcha I know who'll be first in line." Well, yesterday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I'm Andy, and I have a concern first for my friend Sarah Ann, who one of these days is going to be in the pulpit as a guest speaker here, who had a medical emergency and is in Mission Hospital right now, recuperating. She's feeling better, but just a candled concern for her. And I'd also like to light about a chandelier's worth of candles of joy to see Jackie Franklin back here today. She had her shoulder replaced and is doing wonderfully well. I'm glad to see you, Jackie.
I'm Scott, and I'm going to be lighting a candle of profound joy and endurance, because this is September 4th. It's now 11:20, and so almost to the minute, this is my 40th wedding anniversary. Calm down, I understand. You're wondering how someone so young and good looking could have married 40 years. I am a testament to clean living and deep delusion. And I gotta tell you, reality is rude. It's hard to hang on to the delusion.
Good morning, my name is Alice, and I have a joy and a concern to share this morning. The concern is that this Monday my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. We're very hopeful that as of right now what they can see is minor. So I'll be traveling back and forth to Atlanta some to be with her through that journey. And the joy that I wanted to share today is that my stepdaughter has just completed her first month of school in Denmark at International People's College, getting to study with people from, I think, over 40 countries. And my partner, Michelle, will get to visit her. Travel plans willing, we'll get to travel and visit her and check on her and get to see what it's all about there. So, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm Danish.
Good morning, I'm Roberta Madden, and please light a candle of joy for me. My husband David and I will be celebrating our 66th wedding anniversary. That will be tomorrow. And you've probably heard me say this before, but the reason that he and I stayed together so long is because he and I are both in love with the same man.
Hi, I'm Milt. That's a hard act to follow. My September is just full of joy. When we were traveling, a couple months ago, we were driving through Michigan and we were near Lansing, and my wife reminded me that we met 50 years ago at Michigan State. And Jim just gave me a thumbs up. That's the wrong Michigan.
I know.
Oh, okay, there's a thumbs up. In about 10 days, we'll be celebrating our anniversary. And for those of you that don't know us, our birthdays fall on that same day. And next week, another joy is that we're going to resume something we call the pie party, which we haven't done for 2 years. And the last time we did it in 2019, we had 46 pies and over 60 people. So it's hard to know who wants to attend. So if you're interested in attending next week, let me know and I will send you the invite and the instructions, but you got to be able to bake a pie. And it's only 46 years for us this year. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sally. The ongoing saga of the neuropathic pain in my knee, as I told you a couple weeks ago, I went to the Mayo Clinic and they got me right in for an appointment, and I had 3 tests while I was there, 2 MRIs and a EMG, which is a nerve test. And even after all of that, I had to wait another week to get basically the diagnosis back from the doctor. The bad news is that they don't really know any more than they did before. They think I have something called CRPS, which is complex regional pain syndrome, but I'm missing one of the big symptoms, which is swelling, but I've got all the other ones. And the good news is that there is a treatment they want to try. It's something called a sympathetic nerve block in my back, in the lumbar area. So I can get that either here or there. I'm not sure which I'm going to do yet, but we'll give it a try and see how it goes.
I'm the other Sue Stone, and I have 2 joys. One is we now have a unofficial drum circle going in Black Mountain. It started last Friday. And anybody who's interested, we're gonna do it again this Friday at 6 o'clock down at the pavilion down at Lake Tomahawk. Bring a drum, bring pots and pans, bring 2 sticks. And if you have extra drums, bring those, and we just kind of passed them around and got to know each other a little bit more. The second joy is we moved here to be closer to my son's family, and now we get to watch my grandson play soccer, and yesterday we got to watch our son play soccer again. Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, there's a joy from Susan Culler and Mamie, thanking you all again for all your support and the food and the phone calls and emails. I think Mamie's been back home about 9 or 10 days now, and they're kind of settling in. And so she wanted me to pass that on to you, and thank you for doing that. For those of you who, for whatever reason, decided not to come up, just know that we keep you in our hearts and in our minds. And thank you, Diane. And so, If you can't hear me, because we've had some good Sundays and bad Sundays, please let me know. So you're not sitting here for 30 minutes, just let me know and we will turn it up. I'm assuming you can hear me now. Okay. Alrighty, so this is the time in the service when I invite you to settle yourselves as you see fit and join in the spirit of prayer and meditation. And as usual, we will have a time of quiet after the meditation. So, this is called the blessed calm of community. Here in the hush of this time and place, away from the rush of the world, we feel the blessed calm of community. It is not a wonder that we people who are often busy beyond our energy and our stamina take the time to pause together. It is not a miracle that we, hard workers and committed citizens, ardent participants in the history of our time, pause for a moment to consider, where do we go from here? Here we take note of the changing seasons. Soon there will be the first chill of the fall season. The sound of geese seeking warmer climes, the new tinges of color in trees and bush. Even in a lunar eclipse that was blocked from our view by persistent clouds, we are aware of all the natural powers that we are blessed by. Here in the pleasures of being together, we are reminded we are a part of something that transcends us, a beloved community of souls that was before we were even here, in which we are fortunate to live, and which will live long after you and I are dead and gone. Let us then cherish the time we have together. Let its calming waters flow over us, and let us be assured that we belong here in this time and in this place. Let us enjoy together the blessed calm of community. And now, for this brief moment while our minds are indeed one, I leave you with the eloquence of silence. So it is. The greatest use of life is to spend it on something that will outlast it. And in that spirit, we will now collect this morning's altar. send an email, I'm sure. But just to remind you that September 11th is our homecoming Sunday, and we're going to have our water communion. We haven't had that in 2 years since COVID. So bring your water, and you know what to do when you get it here. I didn't like the way that laugh sounded. All right, it's interesting. Well, we'll get to it. I want to set this up. I personally was getting triggered by what's going on in the nation, and that somehow there wasn't a sense of urgency, at least to my mind, or we weren't using, to my mind, a strong enough vocabulary to capture what was going on in this time in history. And so I was very pleased when President Biden talked about what he talked about on Thursday. I did not listen to it. I listened to some of it later. So, to be clear, there are conservative people who still adhere to the principles of this nation. So this address is not about them. So please don't come up to me and tell me that I'm talking about all conservatives. I'm talking specifically about a contingent in this nation that, to my mind, is trying to just not give this experiment that we call democracy a chance. It's not, we haven't reached it. It's an experiment. So, we clear? Okay. The first reading I want to share with you is from James Baldwin, and I'm going to share two readings. They're both kind of different, but you'll get the gist. James Baldwin says that the American Negro has the great advantage of having never believed the collection of myths to which white Americans cling. That their ancestors were all freedom-loving heroes, that they were born in the greatest country this world has ever seen, or that Americans are invincible in battle and wise in peace. That Americans have always dealt honorably with Mexicans and Indians and all other neighbors or inferiors. That American men are the world's most direct and virile. That American women are pure. Negroes know far more about white Americans than that. And now this from one of my favorite religious intellectuals, Karen Armstrong. She says, we need myths that will help us to identify with all our fellow beings, not simply those who belong to our ethnic, national, or ideological tribe. We need myths that help us to realize the importance of compassion, which is not always regarded as sufficiently productive or efficient in our pragmatic, rational world. We need myths that help us create a spiritual attitude, to see beyond our immediate requirements and enable us to experience a transcendent value that challenges our selfishness. We need myths that help us to venerate the earth as sacred once again, instead of merely being used as a resource. This is crucial because unless there is some kind of spiritual revolution that is able to keep abreast of our technological genius, her words, we will not save our planet. So this summer for many of us has gone by pretty quickly. The effects of climate change are felt more and more each summer. This summer was a summer of extreme heat for many folks in our nation, and a summer well suited to have made many of us feel unsettled, disrupted, and anxious about the country. I'm reminded of the words of Dr. King when he was accused of not caring about his country, that he said that he was very disappointed, and because, where there can be no great disappointment where there's no great love. The January 6th committee hearing revealed just how close this experiment that we call democracy came to being fatally wounded by the previous administration, and we're not out of the woods yet. The Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe after 50 years, during which abortion was understood to be constitutionally protected, has resulted in disturbing medical stories in several states. You've probably read about those. Mass shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde and Highland Park, gas that has gone up in many places to $5 a gallon, midterm primary elections with no shortage of anti-democratic candidates, parents arguing about when or if their children should learn about race and gender and sex. I could go on and on. These stories are not just indicators of policy failures or of ratcheting up of social tensions out of political expedience or threats to our democracy. They also hint at something more insidious, at least to my mind, the possibility that our story, this myth we tell ourselves about this nation, the national myth, if I can call it that we've lost, it's breaking. Now, that may not be such a bad thing. It depends what we replace it with. But we've lost the thread on this shared American narrative, and it's unraveling. Nations have narratives. All of them do. They need them. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves are how we understand and define a national identity. And over the course of our history, our story has evolved, and our national identity has changed with it. A year ago, I did a sermon on what was going on in Germany, how they, not a utopia by any stretch of the imagination, but they knew that they blew it at the Holocaust. And so they made amends. They saw how ugly they could be. And so they faced their history. We have yet to do that in this country. We're too defensive about it. And so our story has changed. Such evolution was baked into our national political DNA, if you will, even before our Constitution promised a quest for a more perfect union. But now, as I said, the change is being contested. A political scientist by the name of Samuel Goldman makes the case in a book called After Nationalism, Being an American in an Age of Division. He says that the United States is on its third myth or national narrative. He says the first was the covenant myth of our founding, a puritanical telling in which a chosen people, essentially Anglo-Protestant, inherited, not took, but inherited a promised land. He writes that the second myth was the crucible myth that expanded the American identity by more fully integrating other European immigrants and faith traditions as we started to grow as a nation. We took new territories, abolished slavery, and we waged war. These struggles forged a new people, as if in a melting pot, but we know that that was a myth. But it did not settle the questions of race, gender, and equality. The third myth, the one that still resonates with many people today, is one of creed. It's a story that feels quite familiar to us in its connecting principles and ideals to the core of an American identity. This narrative says that the United States was founded on an idea defined by equality, by liberty, and democracy, unbounded by race, religion, gender, or nation of origin. In this myth, the antagonist is inequality. The days of the creed myth, as described by Mr. Baldwin, is on its last leg. Everywhere around us is evidence that we deeply disagree on the meaning and the practice of the basic American principles of liberty, justice, inequality, and democracy. The principle, the people, forgive me, not the principle, the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, who marched through Charlottesville chanting, "Jews will not replace us," who proselytized the great replacement theory, or who champion a religious ethno-nationalism that underscores this covenant myth, they reject the multicultural American identity. They, obviously, this is fear. What else can it be? But fearful people can be dangerous people. They cannot stomach the notion that other people are different. Other people who are different can be Americans, and that their votes do count. If that's not enough, think of the battles in our long-ranging culture war. Don't say gay. There are bills passed with that. Paranoia about critical race theory. Intolerance of free speech rights for people with different beliefs. Identity politics, on both sides of the aisle. Or to quote a famous politician, they're good people on both sides. Debates around racial and gender equality and so on. Oh, and let me be clear about that. The people that I disagree with are still human beings. We're not taking that, you can't take that away, that's the way life is. So, and I'm making it, I'm intentional about referring to these folks because they have humanity, like we do. They may have forgotten it, but they haven't. Some of y'all used to give me an earful, for instance, when, what's the brother, he killed those black people in the church in South Carolina while they were praying. And so we lit a candle for them, and they've gone on to another journey. And we lit a candle, I lit a candle for him. And some of y'all tried to give me the blues about that. But he's a human being. Terrible mistake he did. So we keep that in mind. Often in these kinds of disputes, one side insists that there's only one way to be an American. They appear to demand conformity, and they threaten ostracism. Or think of how our democracy is seized on all sides by a hyper bipartisanship, toxic polarization, over politicalization of usually respected institutions like the Supreme Court and the military. Distortion of the democratic process ranging from threats of violence to FBI agents who are doing their job, of violence against election workers to a steady erosion of our system's legitimacy. This has got to stop. Democracy is treated solely as an instrument to build a narrower America, excusing anti-democratic activities towards that end. And so if we accept Brother Goldman, what he has written, of the successive evolving myths, perhaps a new myth will come along. Perhaps we're discovering a new myth as we move forward. But there is another view. The disruptions we see are less about the result of an evolution of myths and more about the failure of our nation to see itself for what it is and what we struggle to be. I mentioned Germany. I had written and got a response when I sent my sermon there, and got a response from ex-President Merkel's office, which wasn't a form letter. It was because at least, you know, they acknowledged, man, what we did was heinous. Again, it's not perfect, but problems don't get solved unless you see them for what they are. You can't fix something if you don't believe you have a problem. And so the question becomes, do we really want to be a multiracial democracy? That is the question. Do we really want that? It's messy and it's difficult. It's not an evolution so much as it is a struggle. It's the perennial tug of war that the nation reels from this, an identity crisis, often accompanied by violence, civil disobedience, that slightly changes the narrative, little, but never really resolves it. It explains the Jim and Jane Crow era. It explains the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. It explains the late 18th century laws restricted to free white persons. It explains the Chinese Expulsion Act, the 1965 Immigrations Act, progressive reforms, and the last administration's ban, a Muslim ban, and border wall obsession. It explains the Dred Scott decision, as well as Brown versus Board of Education. And so once again, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. The 21st century. And it's not about living in a Star Trek universe or a Handmaid's Tale. That's too soon. The 21st century version, will America be a democracy for the select few who will insist on holding power by any means necessary, or will it be a liberal, inclusive, and fair nation for all who treasure its ideals? Writing in 1967, sociologist Robert Bellah considered the United States to have faced 3 times of trial. 3 seems to be the mystical number with these brothers, but there's another group of 3. The first was concerned with our independence and whether a democratic nation could be conceived from the British Empire. That was number 1. The second trial was about slavery and the question of an inclusive democracy in a diverse nation. The third and current trial, you and I are living in it, but we've not yet addressed the elements of the second trial. But the third trial is whether the United States can be a beacon of liberal democracy in a revolutionary and backsliding world. Not a leader, because all empires decline. We just may be doing it after only 200 years. We're the youngest that may do it. You know, you have Rome, Babylon, what have you. Thousands of years. Britain. It remains to be seen if we are the people who can pass this third trial. And we are up to our necks in it. No, Britain didn't last thousands of years, Rome did. But Britain, you know, Britain said the sun will never set on the British Empire. And Gandhi said, really? So we're up to our necks in it. Midterm elections this fall. Fun, fun, fun. Supreme Court decisions next year, which is only what, 3 months away. Responses to the inevitable protests and acts of civil disobedience that will surely come. The possibility of mass violence, among other things, will signal to us which sides the scales of justice will fall during this period. The outcome is uncertain. And we cannot blindly assume that the emergence of a stronger American myth is inevitable. Success will hinge on our ability to resist the real threat of the F word. And this is why I was so glad that President Biden, well, he had to backtrack a bit, and he got so much blowback. Semi-fascism, the F word is fascism. Let's call it for what it is. It is fascism. Remember, what's his name? Sinclair Lewis said that when fascism comes to America, he didn't say if, he said when it comes, it will come with the cross wrapped in the American flag. What the heck? It's a mess. So how that's baby. And other civic, so let me back my mind up. So, okay, fascism. It's horrible. And we need to be able to use the word. We need to be, and all the blowback he got, and you asked to apologize. It was so sensitive, you have to apologize for saying the word fascism. Well, you have to apologize for saying the word gay. Words like authoritarianism and totalitarian, they're not capturing what's going on right now in this country. It's time to see it and call it for what it is. It's time to use the F word. When citizens embrace violence and intimidation as a political tool, that's called what? Fascism. If we don't call it for what it is, the far right, not all right, the far right will define what it means to be patriotic, what it means to be a Christian, or any other religion in this country. I remember mentioning to you guys a long time ago that the most dangerous thing in America is a liberal with the knowledge of the Bible. Because if you don't know it, they co-opt it. And there's no joke about Unitarians. I went to a liberal religious seminary. I could have gone to Harvard, or I could have gone to a UU seminary, but I wanted to be able to be bilingual. I was raised as a Baptist, but there's an old joke. UU congregations, they want their ministers to know the Bible, they just don't want you to talk about it. Don't want you to talk about it, but we're not like that. But just as it's been doing for all these years, we cannot let people define us. The media shies away from the word. You and I cannot afford to. The institutional defense of what remains of this great experiment, again, because it's not democratic yet, it's an experiment, largely comes down to Congress and the press. Too deeply, I don't know if people, unpopular institutions now, Congress and the press, and they are in different ways passing even greater control to the right. They're abdicating responsibility. The final firewall may be the Department of Justice and National Security, but are you going to put your faith in those institutions? Since the last administration, they have been of little help in helping us with so-called political problems. So are we as a nation still committed and dedicated to the loftier goals of the American myth? For you newcomers today, yes, once in a while I will do a political sermon. We talk about other things as well. You were just fortunate enough to be here today. We in our own time, you and I, are being tested as to whether a nation so dedicated can long endure. So we, you and I, and our friends and neighbors who are conservative, who are black, white, rich, poor, gay, whatever, we've got to pull it together, man. And everybody's not going to agree. But we've got to press on so that, in the immortal words of President Abraham Lincoln from his Gettysburg Address, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. So let's go home. So our closing hymn is number 121. We'll build a land. Please rise as you are willing and able. Abraham Lincoln and Stevie Wonder, what a turn. You can't beat it. He says, so make sure when you're saying that you're in it but not of it, you're not helping to make this earth a place sometimes called hell. Change your words into truth, and then turn that truth into love. And maybe our children's children and their great-great-grandchildren will tell. Have a wonderful afternoon.